Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. So I did read these volumes out of order by accident a little bit. I don't care too much about Zelda timeline continuity anymore, and the books actually they're arranged just kind of like thematically rather than by any kind of continuity. So uh, just as a review, if you haven't seen my previous Zelda manga reviews, this is one of the finest overall quality series I've read. It's one of the very few manga series that I think is age appropriate for younger readers. And basically, based on that, I give it a highest recommendation. And once I finish kind of like the casual reviews of these, I think it'd be fun to do maybe like a more serious, like cartoon YouTube review, video essay on Legend of Zelda manga as literature, something like that. But just want to throw out some quick thoughts. So the Minish Cap is an especially good one. The Minish Cap and Phantom Hourglass aren't in the same timeline as each other, but they have a similar art style. So this is obviously cutesy bootsy chibi face Link, and I think this was the first. What is it? The Wind Waker was the first Zelda game I beat completely on my own without getting stuck, so it has a special place in my heart. There actually is a little Wind Waker manga thing they did, but I don't think it's ever been localized and brought to the States officially, which is a little sad because it's such a great game. But these two stories feature. The weird thing about Link is every version of Link is a separate character. So these are two different versions of the character. They're not the same person, but they both look like the cutesy bootsy Link. So one of my overall praises for this is every single one of these is a different take on the character. Because if he was always Link go saves the princess, Link go saves the princess, Link go saves the princess, right? You get sick of it. So to make each Link feel like a different person altogether, they have to give each Link his own, I don't know, bit of a personality. It's almost like if you gave yourself the assignment of writing 100 Brer Rabbit stories, how quickly would you run out of the common cartoon plots for Brer Rabbit stories? How quickly would you have to start coming up with some really creative variations to keep each Brer Rabbit story fresh? So just as a kind of like as an example of like great writing, like I don't know how they keep coming up with different variations of this character and make each one feel fresh. So one thing noteworthy about this, I think, is that it's written more for a younger audience. So if Twilight Princess is written for a teenage audience, the writing style of this and the narrator is talking to a younger child. Do you know about the Picori? They are teeny tiny creatures the size of your thumb that live everywhere in the world. So what I love about this is a conversational narrator. And J.R.R. Tolkien does this in The Hobbit. Good fairy tale writers like Bojania Niamsova do this. They ask the child a conversational question to kind of get the child thinking about what's going on in the world, and then that draws them into it. I even like the size of your thumb as a frame of reference for how big these things are. And the Picori are very reminiscent of fairy tale creatures like Lamtuks in Jewish mythology, or the elves or gnomes that come and do chores. And this Link doesn't have his hat yet. This is kind of an origin story for the Green Hat. And I love that, unlike other Links where they're much more noble or much more mature, this guy's just a brat. And he does some naughty things, and I kind of love it because it's a little bit of brattishness is understandable. Like you'll forgive someone who's immature of being a little immature. And Zelda in this, will turn on the waterworks to get him to agree to take her to the party, right? So in about half of these stories, Link meets Zelda, and of course when he meets her, she knocks him over with how beautiful and amazing she is. And in half of these stories, he's known her since early childhood. So that always gives it its own unique flair. In some of these stories, Zelda is more prominent of a character, and in this one, she's a little less prominent of a character. And I almost think that's maybe like on purpose. In maybe like the little kid story, the romance isn't that important. The adventure is important. In an older teen's story, his feelings towards her become more central. So I mark this because this is just a really great G-rated horror build-up. Total silence. He walks into the dark thing. They're both visibly nervous, and you see their facial expressions. They're afraid to step forward, and when he takes one step forward, he steps into water, right? So now it's in total darkness, stepping in water. That's a little creepy. You can imagine the sploosh, sploosh, sploosh sound effects. He sees this mysterious light of these mushrooms that are, I guess, bioluminescent. Close-ups on their nervous expressions. A comedic expression as something scary drops behind him. Scary eyes, and there's the monster. They're giant slugs, and they're almost still kind of cute and adorable, yet the build-up makes them still feel scary in this context. So that's great. There's also kind of like the fact that he's an immature character is great because his partner is sort of a fuddy-duddy old fart teacher who's giving him a hard time. So making Link younger and more immature makes this guy look older and more fuddy-duddy by contrast. Thank you for marking my page, little doodle. And then at the end of this chapter, there's a theme being built of turning into a teeny tiny little person, turning back into a little big person. This is also exciting. When you're small, everything is a big adventure. So I've noticed a lot of children's stories involve shrinking or getting large. I mean, it's just an obviously very fun little magical plot point you can use. But when you think about it, children literally live in a world designed for big people. They're surrounded by big people all the time. They're literally getting bigger, and they like measure their head against the door to see how much bigger they're getting. So in this story, there is literally, you know, oh, I'm turning into a teeny tiny little person. I'm turning into a big person, right? That kind of stuff. And then it's being connected to I'm small. I'm growing up. When you're small, the world is a big adventure. That's great. That's great stuff. Hopping ahead. Now, why do Mark? Okay, I noticed that death shows up in a lot of Legend of Zelda stories. Many characters have experienced death. They're trying to cope with death, and they don't say, "Oh, she went to heaven." They just say she died. They're not afraid to tell you that people die, and when they die, they're gone forever, and you have to cope with the emotional loss of that. You have to decide to do something with your life after that. And they do it even in the little kid stories, which I think that's just something really important to this world. The fact that death exists in Zelda's world gives some weight to what he does. Okay, and this is just an example of him being a little kid. He gets in the cart and he starts immediately having fun and wanting to do it again because it's a roller coaster ride, right? Like he's on a journey to save the princess who's been turned into stone, but he has time to stop and goop around while he's at. And this cracked me up. So he sneaks into a house. He sees the pretty older girl taking care of the chickens, and he starts to sneak to take a peek under her skirt. And the teacher's just rolling her eyes at him like, what kind of hero does that? Great. This is great. None of the other Links would do this. He's being a little naughty. He's a stupid kid who's being curious, and then his comeuppance says she steps on him by accident, right? So he gets punished for being naughty. But what's great about this is, yeah, this makes him his own character. Only this Link does this. None of the other Links would do that. And I even like how the animals have a cuter design sensibility, maybe a little bit more like Osamu Tezuka in this one. So, what else is there to say? He goes on the journey. He finds everything he needs. He saves the world. There's forgiveness at the end. What was I going to say about Vati? I thought it was kind of interesting that Vati is a child who is almost following the same path as Ganondorf, and just at the end they managed to save him from basically this horrible fate of being trapped forever as an evil immortal monster. Oh, I was going to say that. There's another theme about death in this, where there's a character who, she's like a mayfly fairy, and they live a very short life, and when they die when they finish singing. And so Vati gets the brilliant idea to transform her from a person literally into a moth, and when he does this, she freaks out and she's confused and panicking. So Vati says about this, if I'd let her be, she'd have died. But now in this form, she can live forever. You should thank me for saving her life. Ooh, this hits so hard because Link was just learning to accept the fact that she was going to die, and she was at peace with the fact she was going to die. And then Vati stole that from her and cursed her with immortality. Holy cats! That's horrible. And then it also parallels with his problem where he's violating his nature. The nature of the Picori is to protect and serve humanity. He wants to gain power so he can rule over humanity, but he hasn't considered that the consequence for that is he's violating nature and will turn himself into an immortal monster. And he's really horrified as it starts to happen to him. You really feel for the guy. So what can I say? It's a story for little kids. It's a perfect story for little kids that hits these really deep, eternal themes of life and death. One of my favorites in the series so far. I will review Phantom Hourglass next time, and I will try to dig up that obscure Wind Waker one and see if I can do like a special podcast video about that. Come on, Nintendo, bring over all the Zelda manga. There's a demand for it. All right, I'm number one Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you later.